This meeting is being recorded.
Can you see Lieutenant Collins?
Okay.
So she's gonna.
I'm setting up Facebook.
Is this good right here? Oh, can you get my phone? Because I want to share it on my Facebook page from PGSAO. It's not password protected, Mike. So
You're not muted.
Okay. No, from the PGSAO. They're going to share the PGSAO page online. Just the icon, yes, I can see that.
Okay.
No, you share the PGSAO page on my Facebook page. So if you just press share.
Can you go on mute? Okay, we're going to get started.
Take this off mute. All right.
Good evening. I'm Denise Smith, the Communications Director for the Honorable Aisha M. Braveboy, State's Attorney for Prince George's County, Maryland. Thank you all for joining us this evening for an update on an extremely significant sentencing for Sean Urbanski. Today, you will be hearing from State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy, followed by her Principal Deputy, Jason Abbott, Deputy State's Attorney and Homicide Chief, Jonathan Church, followed by Mr. and Mrs. Richard and Dawn Collins, the parents of First Lieutenant Richard Collins III. With regard to the flow of this press conference, we ask that everyone, with the exception of those giving remarks, to please keep your videos turned off. When we get to the Q&A portion for the reporters in the webinar, if you have a question following the remarks, you can let us know in the chat box. When we get to the Q&A, your name will be called. At that time, we will promote you up to so that you can turn your video on. So then you can turn your video on, and then we will unmute you. After you finish asking your question, please stop your video, and one of the speakers will respond to your question. And at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our State's Attorney, the Honorable Aisha N. Braveboy.
Thank you, and thank you all so much for being here for this important press conference. You know, on December 14th, 2018, less than 2 weeks into my tenure as State's Attorney, I had the opportunity to meet with Dawn and Richard Collins. They were the first family I met with as State's Attorney, and they really helped to define who I was going to become as State's Attorney the care and commitment that I was going to make to victims and next of kin, the choices I would make on how cases would be prosecuted in our office. And so when I met these two amazing individuals, these amazing parents, I knew in my heart that I was in the right place at this time because we connected on a level that was so deep. I didn't know their pain. I could never know a parent's pain, but I understood that it was my job to ensure that there was justice, not only for them, but this son that they raised to be a handsome, giving, caring patriot who wanted to serve his country. He wanted to be a father. He wanted to be a husband one day. He was a great brother. He was an amazing friend. He is someone that I wish I would have had an opportunity and the honor to get to know. But because a coward, a racist, someone who had hate in his heart, determined that Richard Collins, Lieutenant Collins, now First Lieutenant Richard Collins III, that his life was not valuable, that he was not worthy, because someone had hate in their heart and stabbed him with a blade of the knife going 3.5 inches into his chest because someone committed that vicious act. I would never be able to meet him. Many of you would never be able to have met him personally. And I say that because we will all know him. We will all remember him. There is a scholarship named after First Lieutenant Richard Collins III that supports students at HBCUs. There is a law, a hate crimes law, that we fought for in Annapolis to expand the opportunities for prosecutors to prosecute hate crimes fully in the state of Maryland. And we are a model for the nation. And so while I will never have the opportunity to get to know First Lieutenant Richard Collins III personally, he has affected me, he has affected the state, and he will affect the world. Today, a circuit court judge in Prince George's County sentenced his murderer, Sean Urbanski, to natural life in prison. It is the second highest sentence that anyone can receive in the state of Maryland. We believe and we appreciate the judge's verdict or his sentence, and we respect the fact that he rendered a sentence that he thought was fair and just. And while we ask for life without the possibility of parole, we will accept the decision of the court to sentence Sean Urbanski to a very serious sentence, which is natural life. And so today concludes this part of our fight for justice for First Lieutenant Richard Collins III. But this handsome man, whose picture I have kept on my desk since it was given to me by his parents, the fight for justice that this young man also fought for won't end today. And so I look forward to working with the Collins family. I consider them family myself. I look forward to working with them to rid this world of hate. And hate this world has seen like no other time in our lifetime. What happened on January 6th, the insurrection that occurred on January 6th, was caused by hate. Hate kills. It's the same type of hate that killed this young man, First Lieutenant Richard Collins III. and it cannot and will not be tolerated. What we know is that oftentimes hate is fueled by social media. His killer was on alt-right nations Facebook groups and other social media chat groups that shared racist images, racist discussions, but he fueled what was already in his heart. And the night that he took this man's life as he knows it was going to be over. This is a message that we are sending here in the state of Maryland, but it is a message that must be sent around this country. We are at a critical time in our nation's history. There has never been the level of blatant racism, destruction, insurrection, treason, all fueled by hate, all fueled by people who think they are better than someone else based on race. So we will continue to honor the legacy of First Lieutenant Richard Collins III by fighting all forms of hate. And in February, we will be hosting a town hall to discuss hate and how that plays a factor in our lives and in the lives all over this country. This has got to end. Hate kills, and it killed this young man. And now another young man will be doing life, which is what he deserves. I want to thank my principal deputy, Jason Abbott, who led the prosecution of this case, along with my homicide chief and deputy state's attorney, Jonathan Church. They did a phenomenal job. They are able attorneys. I chose them specifically for this case when I got here because I knew that they had great experience. They had great track records, but also they are good people and they are men of faith. And when you try a case and you have to do your best to find justice, there's something you have to lean on. It is faith that they leaned on. It is the cause of justice that they leaned on. It is the understanding that this family and this community deserve better. They leaned on that. And they presented a phenomenal case, which is why this case resulted in a first-degree murder conviction, the highest conviction available in the state of Maryland, first-degree murder. And I want to thank them for their hard work, their dedication to this office, their leadership, and their care and commitment to the family. And I want you to hear from them because there are cases that we have in this courthouse all the time. But certain cases are defining cases. They define careers of attorney, they define offices, they define the values of our community. And I think what we sent, the message we sent in this case, is that hate, bigotry, racism will not be tolerated, and that we will prosecute to the fullest extent, and we will seek the most severe penalties. And we got a severe penalty in this case. So I will now turn the floor over to my principal deputy, Jason Abbott.
Thank you, Madam State's Attorney. Thank you, everybody. It was a privilege and an honor to have the opportunity to try this case. I thank the State's Attorney for selecting me and having the opportunity to try this case with Jonathan Church. It was an honor to get to know and meet the Collins family. I do think that, this case was important because it was really important to get justice for First Lieutenant Richard Collins III. You know, spending so much time with the family, we did get to, you know, get a sense of the kind of man that he was, what he was about to become, and it was just a true shame that it was cut short by a racially motivated first-degree murder. As the state's attorney said, you know, the importance of this case was really to send that message that this hate, this hateful rhetoric, this divisive speech that, you know, is flooding us daily now, that it has consequences, that it does lead to death and destruction, but that, you know, we do stand for justice and we will prosecute that. And, you know, we will seek, you know, to get justice for those that are victims of hate. So it was truly a privilege and an honor to fight for that cause. It's truly a privilege and an honor to work with, alongside with Ms. Braveboy, because this is what she stands for. She stands for, you know, justice for all. And there's no way that she's going to let, you know, the people that she serves, you know, think that hatred and intolerance is going to be something that, you know, people are going to be able to get away with without having to face the consequences. So I thank you, Madam State's Attorney. I thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Collins and the Collins family, and I thank you, Jonathan. So,
If everyone could just give us a moment, we are having a slight technical problem, and we will be with you momentarily. Amani, could you put back up the graphic, please? Okay, we can turn the graphic off now. And now we can hear from Mr. and Mrs. Collins as soon as they are ready. I'm sorry. Now it's we're going with you'll hear from Jonathan Church, and following Jonathan Church will then be Mr. and Mrs. Collins.
Good evening. I want to say thank you to Ms. Braveboy for trusting me with working on this case with Jason Abbott. More importantly, there's no question why First Lieutenant Richard Collins III was a great man, and because I've met his parents, and it makes sense to me. They raised a great young man and a great young lady as well, First Lieutenant Richard Collins' sister. And he had a lot of promise, and I think one of the things I mentioned during sentencing is I'm sad that I never had a chance to meet him, but I did get to meet him through them, and he was an amazing young man, and his life was certainly cut short. I will say, and I'll share this with you all because I think this is significant, is that it was surprising to me the amount of hidden hate that there is, and that we discovered in working on this case, that the defendant had been a member of a alt-right nation Facebook group. And who wouldn't have known that a 22-year-old even knew such a thing existed? And the number of racist and hate memes that were on his phone were they were baffling. I had no idea where a 22-year-old young man who's in a college and has a good upbringing by a good family would find these things and even save these things and pursue these things. And that's a scary thing. And I think it's probably something we've seen over the last 4 years as well, is sometimes if you walk around in the dark, you don't notice all the things at your feet, but if you shine a light on it, suddenly you see things just come out of the woodwork that you weren't aware of. And I think that's kind of some of what was revealed in this particular instance. So it was a privilege and an honor to work with the family in getting justice for First Lieutenant Richard Collins III and seeking a punishment that was appropriate. The defendant will be spending the rest of his natural life in prison for committing a hate crime. And hopefully that sends a message to people across the country that hate won't be tolerated. Good people like my boss, Ms. Braveboy, will prosecute you if you do things based on hate. Police will investigate you if you take action based on hate, and will find the evidence to support, or at least to enlighten us as to what the hate is behind and motivating in certain crimes. But I want to thank the family for their support through the entire time, all that they did, and more importantly, Ms. Braveboy and Jason Abbott as we worked through this case and got this result. Thank you.
And now we can hear from the Collins family.
There you go.
What's it say? It still says the spotlight.
Good evening. Move in, move in,
Move up.
move in.
Is it on? I thought it says unmute myself.
You see us?
Yeah,
Yeah.
hit that.
There you go.
Okay. Are you good now?
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, good evening. We, first of all, Dawn and I would like to thank everyone, State's Attorney Braveboy and Prosecutor Jason Abbott and Prosecutor Jonathan Church. We really have to say that we're indebted to you for your persistence and your professionalism throughout this entire journey. And, you know, we're very pleased with the way that you have treated us and how you've performed your jobs. We're very happy with that. We're now just coming to understand the repercussions of the judge's decision. And we have to say that while we are disappointed that the charge that you pursued was not fulfilled, we certainly are happy that the sentence gave him life without possibility, for his natural life. And we're resigned to continue our legacy of our son and continuing to support all the causes that we want to make a positive difference in going forward with what remains of our life in honor of his life. We thank everyone that's been involved with us along this journey, all the people that have offered both support materially and, you know, emotionally and spiritually. We're indebted to all of you, because the only reason and the only way that we could be able to stand through all of this is with the support of the community, of a caring and loving community, and we're very grateful for that. And now I'll let my wife have the floor.
Again, I'd like to piggyback on what my husband stated. First, I'd like to thank Aisha Braveboy for her great leadership. Jonathan and Jason, you have been phenomenal, but we cannot be forgetful of the Maryland Crime Victims Center and Ms. Pauline Mandel, who was also our counsel. As my husband forestated, we asked for life without parole. And we know we did not achieve that, but needless to say, as what my husband stated, we're gonna fight on. We will not be quiet, because this scourge of hate has cost my family way too much. And it's costing many, many people in America. And as my husband has often stated, we are patriots. and we will not have anyone tell us that we're not. So again, thank Prince George's County for all that they've done, and we continue to work with them.
Thank you.
And now we'll move over to the Q&A portion of the program. We do have one question from Mike Kunzelman from the Associated Press. He does say, can you specify whether Judge Hill sentenced Urbanski to life with or without the possibility of parole? Which I think that question is answered. But if it's life without the possible, I'm sorry, if it is not life without parole, if it's life, can you pinpoint the estimated time he will become eligible for parole?
A person that's sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, they become eligible for parole after 15 years. But the governor does have to sign off on a person being paroled once they receive a life sentence. And they don't necessarily, just because they become eligible does not mean that they get paroled. And the governor only has to sign off on it if it's recommended by the parole board. So, you just become eligible after 15 years. It doesn't mean that you will be recommended for parole, and doesn't mean that it even gets to the governor to be approved.
I see we have a question from Amy Cho. She can be promoted to a panelist so that she can, and made a co-host so she can turn on her video.
They can see.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Yeah, for some reason I can't turn on my camera, but this works fine. First of all, Mr. and Mrs. Collins, I just want to say how deeply sorry I am for your loss. I met you actually a few years ago, and yeah, I just, so very sorry. And if you could just, speak a little bit about Richard and the wonderful person that he was.
What can I say about Richard? First of all, he was our firstborn. He had a dynamic personality. Richard believed in what he was doing with his military career. He had aspired to be the next General Colin Powell, and there was nothing going to stop him. Richard believed in being an innovator. He brought an intramural lacrosse team to Bowie State. That gives you an essence to the young man that he was. He did not believe anyone was going to be his stranger or a stranger to him. He was very inclusive. So that's why it is so disheartening to hear that our son was murdered in this manner. We still strongly contend that it was a hate crime. Richard was singled out, but he was a true patriot.
Yes, and also on a personal level, he was just kind of a fun-loving, kind of inquisitive, but he liked a little mischief every now and then, and he made a point to, I don't know, sometimes antagonize his sister, so I'd have to step in and let him know. He constantly threw in her face that he was the oldest, so I had to let him know, yeah, but she was my baby, so but he loved her dearly. There's nothing he wouldn't do for her.
Amen.
They were just two, spirits, tied at the hip. And she looked up to him, and, he was her big brother, and he was going to do anything he could to protect his little sister.
And he was just ready to launch.
Yep.
He was on the pinnacle of doing great things. As I've often stated, I saw him go in as a boy, but I saw a man walk across that stage to take the oath to protect the United States of America.
And Will Ford. Will Ford can be promoted up to a panelist and then promoted to co-host so that he can turn on his camera.
Good evening. I was going to ask something close to that for the Collins family. But since you explained much about Richard, and I've been to Annapolis and heard a bunch of stories and been to the campus, heard a lot of stories about him. So I'll just ask this one question for time. How strong is the bond that you have for State's Attorney Brave Boy? Thank you.
When you say how strong is the bond, what are you asking me? Is she ready to move in our house? Or what? I mean, I think we have a great working relationship, and that's a good thing to have. And we're able to speak one-on-one. I'll tell you something that State's Attorney did do when the hate crime charge was thrown out. We had a one-on-one conversation. And she says, let's do something about this. And we went to Annapolis and changed. That's phenomenal. The first time up to go and change a law. And that law will forever be on the books with my son's name on it. So I hope that answers your question about that type of bond.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. So if there are no more questions, I want to thank you again for attending this press conference. Please make sure to be on the lookout for our post press release following this event. And thank you again, and that concludes our event.